Good afternoon or good morning, everyone. Welcome to the 2021 International Symposium on Tugging Rituals and for Sustainability, Living with Ice Age. My name is Jin Young-seo, Assistant Program Specialist at the International Information and Networking Center for Intangible Cultural Heritage in the Asia-Pacific region under the auspices of UNESCO, ICHCAP. Within the framework of the 2003 Convention for the Safeguarding Intangible Cultural Heritage, ICHCAP operates the Information and Networking Project to support the UNESCO strategic plan with the 48 member states in the Asia-Pacific regions. ICHCAP is organizing the symposium from yesterday. Actually, the day before yesterday, we live streamed the rituals of the KGC Tug of War. Now, I would like to move on to the second session, which is the theme is Convergence and Sustainability of Culture. Director Kwan-ho Lee from the National Folk Museum of Korea will facilitate the session. Without further delay, I will hand over the microphone to the director. The floor is yours.
네, 방금 소개받은 국립미술박물관 이관호입니다.
Hello everyone, I am Lee
오늘
Kwan-ho,
우리나라
Assistant
최고의
Professor from the
축제
National
전문가들을
Folk Museum
모시고
of Korea.
세계 인류
We're here with the
무형문화유산
experts of
줄다리기의
festivals
본고장인
from around the world
충남 당진
to engage
기지시
in
줄다리기
discussions, and we're
박물관에서
particularly here
두
at the
번째
Tanjin
섹션의
City
모더레이터를
at
맡게
the
되어
KGC
매우
줄다리기
기쁘게 생각합니다.
Museum, and it's a great pleasure to be the moderator of this excellent
이번
session.
국제술대의 주제는
The topic
2021년
of this
지속
symposium
가능 발전을 위한 아시아
is
전통
tugging
줄다리기라는
rituals and
내용으로
games
진행되고
for its
있는데요.
sustainability.
그 중에서도 두 번째 섹션의 세부
And
주제는
particularly the
지속
second
가능한
session will
발전을
be
위한
on looking
무형유산
into
활용 관련 사례
convergence and
발표로
sustainability
이번
of
섹션에서는
culture.
4명의
We
발표자께서
have four
발표를
presenters for session
해주시겠습니다.
2.
이번 섹션의 발표와 토론 시간은 총 80분으로
We have a total of 80 minutes for this session. Therefore, we do not have ample time. Therefore, I would like to ask the speakers to make sure to keep the time limit of 15 minutes for their presentation. And because we are doing this via Zoom, I would like to ask you to keep to the time limit. And we also have a discussion session. But in terms of discussion session, I will be posting some questions as moderator, and we will also be answering the questions that are posted on the chat box. Therefore, if you do have any comments or questions, please use the chat box on YouTube. And after the presentations, we'll make sure to have your questions answered. So then, let us now start the very first presentation of the session. The first presenter is Kim Jung-hwan from Korea Festival Culture Institute. Mr. Kim Jung-hwan, as you're all very well aware, is an expert on festivities and festivals around the world, as well as in Korea. He is particularly noted for his research on festivals, and he's putting in a lot of effort to facilitate festivity. He has great interest in 기지시 줄다리기, and today he'll be talking about the correlation between festivals and tugging rituals and games. A big round of applause, please.
반갑습니다. It is a pleasure to meet you. I've just been introduced. My name is Kim Jung-hwan. I see a representative from the Philippines, Gustaka. I don't know if they can hear me. So today I'm going to talk about the correlation between tugging rituals and games. But I'm going to begin by talking about the conclusion first, because I believe that the tug of war, and we have to think about the scholarly or academic implications of tug of war to try to find correlations between tugging rituals and games and festivals. But in any case, I would like to talk about this topic. So we're going to talk about tug of war and the correlation between tug of war, tugging rituals and games, and festival. We don't have a lot of time, so I'm going to be as speedy as possible. As you know, 4 countries, Korea, Cambodia, Vietnam, and the Philippines, work together at the 10th session of the Intergovernmental Committee of UNESCO, held in Namibia, Africa, from November 30th to December 4th in 2015. And with the favorable evaluation of the Intergovernmental Committee, we've had the multinational inscription, the 4 countries of tugging rituals and games. And this has led to very positive implications, not just in the 4 countries, but elsewhere as well. And many other communities are working for the sustainable development of tug of war. 6 of the rights in Korea were included in this multinational inscription, such as the 기지시, 영산 줄다리기, 삼척 줄다리기, 의리양 줄다리기, 남해성구 줄긋기, and 밀양감나게 줄당기기. And Vietnam, Cambodia, and the Philippines are also included in this. With the Philippines in Baraway, where the Ifgao community lives, they've worked together with us on this multinational inscription. So just briefly on where the tug of war began. So there isn't a lot of historical archives or academic texts that tell us where exactly the tug of war or the tugging games and rituals began. We just know that the communities have continued to preserve this tradition over time. If we were to look at historical archives, there's mention that it started in Egypt and Myanmar, elsewhere, many countries in Southeast Asia. And also because many countries in Asia have a farming tradition, this agricultural tradition, the tugging rituals and games, have been universally widespread in this region as well. Right now, even in Canada, some of the Eskimo communities also use a shorter rope to engage in tugging rituals and games there as well. So if we were to look specifically into the origin of tugging rituals and games, it is difficult for us to know exactly when and where it began, because so many communities around the world practice this ritual and game. But if we were to focus in Asia, we want to understand the types of forms and styles of tugging rituals and games during the Tang Dynasty in China. Is saying that the tug of war originated from battle between Wu and Chu in the period of spring and autumn. Some folklore approaches say that it was practiced as an agricultural ritual for good harvest since before that. And if you look on the bottom, you'll see a small picture there. This is what we see in the Book of Sui and the Book of Tang. And then if we move on to some of the cases in Korea, where tugging rituals and games started in Korea, if we look at the Dongguk Yeojiseungnam, which was published in the 15th century in Joseon Dynasty, this is where the first records of tugging rituals and games first appeared. And it says that tugging rituals and games started in 6th century in China, so we assume that tugging rituals and games in Korea also began around that time. So I talked about the origin of 줄다리기 thus far. This 줄다리기, or tug of war, became seen as more of a sport element and as a form of competition. And in Greece, before BC 500, even before then, there's mention of tug of war used. And in AD 1000, Scandinavian people and German champions competed with each other using tug of war. And in China, as I mentioned before, China, Mongolia, Turkey, these countries see tug of war. We see tug of war mentions in France, and also with the Paris Olympic in 1920 with the Belgium Antwerp Olympics, tug of war was actually a competitive category that was played in the Olympic Games. So if we take a look at this from an ethnological, or folkloric approach, there is so many specific characteristics of tugging rituals and games. And one of which is that it has the form of a ritual. And within this ritual, it has the symbolism of origin, ritual, and rite, and it fosters a participation of community. So it has that collectivity But in the third, it also has the characteristic of deviance. It's non-routine. And fourthly, there's the spirit of competitiveness. There's a contest, competition, and it's very spontaneous. Spontaneous, meaning that people voluntarily participate. The community voluntarily participates in these games. So this is the approach that many folklore researchers take. And also, many of these tugging rituals and games became seen from the point of view of festivals, which is slightly different from folkloric approaches. Because if we take a look at many of the festival programs we see around us, and when tugging rituals and games are included in these festivals, many people tend to see them as a kind of content, as a main leading content of that particular festival. So this traditional folkloric ritual of tug of war, and then this aspect of tug of war as a game and tug of war as a competitive sport, there might be a little bit different, but all of them have similar characteristics that tie them in as a prototypical tug of war. With festivals, as you know, festivals began with the origin of human history. In ancient Greece, they had festivals there with the Dionysus festivals and with the festival of the sun that is still practiced to this day in Peru. Many of these festivals started in the land. The reason is because many of these societies that were agricultural in nature, they prayed for a good harvest, and later they would thank the gods for a good harvest. So this was the primary origin of many of these festivals. So we see in these festivals that people pray to the gods, and they left their faith to the gods, and the festivals celebrated a sort of beginning, a new beginning for those societies. With these festivals, if we take a look at their different attributes, they have a ritual feature, playfulness, sense of community, participation, deviance. These fundamental functions of festivals are all there. From the ancient times and all the way to the modern times, the festivals were all very much religious in nature. The religious rites and rituals have been very much emphasized. But if we look at the contemporary festivals have moved away from religious behavior, and they've given a new sort of purpose to the festivals, and that is the kind of festivals that we see in the present day. If we look at the prototypicality of these festivals, meaning the prototype of festivals, in the past, these prototypical festivals did not serve a particular purpose. They were the end in and of themselves. It's not that people tried to do something through festivals, but that the festival was the end result. The festival provided a sort of belonging to the community. They gave community unity, participation, and they felt a sense of stability and security. And they felt that it was a rite of passage, and it gave them a sense of a social community. That is the prototype of festivals. But then festivals have later come to be seen as a sort of game, as a sort of play. So that is a difference. In the festivals, we have that aspect of play, of fun, which is, I think you very well know, which is found in the book Homo Ludens, which was written by the Dutch historian Johan Huizinga, where he talks about the human that thinks, the thinking human, where he says that play is not an element of culture, that culture itself has a characteristic as play. And the French sociologist Roger Caillot also wrote in his book, Le Jeu et les Hommes, that humans could not play alone. Human play is a social phenomenon, so there is always the participation of a group. There needs to be groups that engage in play. And there is no cultural practice to make people equal as much as a play or a game could. So with these plays, there are two types of play, so two standards that govern all forms of play, such as rules and will. And then Roger Caillot continued to divide into four play forms: agon, mimicry, ilinx, and alea. Agon here symbolizes competition. So this aspect of agon, or the spirit of competition, this is something that we see very clearly in tug of war. one of the most important elements of tug of war, and that leads us to believe that tug of war is a kind of play through the spirit of competition. It's a kind of a competitive play, if we were to follow Roger Carlo's definition. Moving on to the third chapter, the relationship between festivals and tugging games. With tug of war, large members of the community participate in tug of war. So it's a collective play originating from rituals and had a competitive, festive characteristic that the community took part in. So it refers to a sort of regularly practiced tug of war where many villagers, many members of the community would come together to perform. And this, in and of itself, is a festival in the prototypical sense. This is the key argument that I want to talk about through my presentation, that festivals and tugging games are not separate from each other, that tugging games are a festival, and a festival can be seen as a tug of war. However, in Korea, many people say that this is a seasonal sort of custom, not a festival, that this is something that people just practice on a seasonal basis. And I don't think that perspective is correctly accurate. There are many kinds of festivals, and there are prototypical festivals. Their meaning and purposes behind the festivals. And we take them all comprehensively. They tell us that festivals and tug of war are one and the same. So it matters whether we're going to see festivals and tug of war from an ethnological point of view, or a folklorist point of view, or from the point of view of community uniformity, or from the point of view of tourism. But whatever the case, festivals and tug of war, when we look at the correlation between the two, is that both of them exist in the same context. People perform and engage in festivals the same way that they do with tug of war. So tug of war and festival are one and the same. Tug of wars have the same elements that we see with festivals. Of course, depending on the geography, depending on the country, the form and practice could be a little bit different. But the way that tug of wars are performed in practice are the same way, the same characteristics that we find with festivals, because these are elements that live and breathe within the community. So with tug of wars, you know that the community all comes together, they put in their strength and focus and engage together. And if we go back to the agricultural societies, many people engage in tug of war as a way to pray to the gods. So this also, tug of war contributed to strengthening the bonds between the community members while also praying for good harvest and a plentiful catch. So with that, I would like to briefly conclude my presentation. Thank you very much for paying attention. Thank you very much. That was, I think, your original presentation lasted for 8 pages or so, but you really worked very hard to keep within the 15-minute time limit. So thank you very much for that excellent presentation. I need to ask you for your understanding, and that as a moderator, I would like to briefly summarize the presentation and comment on it before I move on to the next presentation. In fact, that was what I would usually do in my capacity as moderator, but because we are joining here in a virtual online format, I'm going to skip over the summaries and just go straight to the second presentation. The second presenter is Heidi Hermosora from the Philippines, Hongduan City. She is in charge of the tourism office at Hongduan. She's going to tell us about the line between safeguarding heritage and tourism in the Philippines. Because she is working in the field and she's a tourism officer working in the field, I think this would be very beneficial. As I work in the National Folk Museum of Korea, I would also like to hear very much what she has to say. We would like to hear from you now.
Good afternoon. A pleasant afternoon to each and everyone. I'm Heidi Hermosora, and I am from the local government unit of Hongduan, Ifugao, province of Ifugao, Cordillera Administrative Region. And I'll be discussing regarding our very own punuk as our subject is the line between safeguarding intangible cultural heritage and tourism. Next, please.
통역하는 줄 알고. 예. 그냥 바로 계속 말씀하시면 통역이 되는 거죠?
Yes, would you like to continue on with your presentation, please?
So let me welcome you to the municipality of Hung Duan. So municipality of Hung Duan is one of the 11 municipalities of Ifugao. It is bounded on the east by Kiangan, on the west by Mountain Province, on the south by the municipality of Tinok, and on the north by Banawe. Next, please. As shown in the picture, as you can see, Hung Duan is very mountainous place, and it is dissected by rivers, streams, and creeks, and the slope is actually above 50% with an elevation of a minimum of 700 meters to 2,700 meters above sea level. And we experience only two types of season, the wet and the dry season. The dry season starts from the month of December until May, and the wet season starts from June to November. Next, please. The total area of the local government unit of Hung Duan is only 28,714 square hectares, and mostly open forest and closed forest. Next, please. We only have a total population of 9,400 as per Philippine Statistics Authority record, and the municipality is composed of only 9 barangays. The people of Hung Duan only belongs to the Tuali tribe, and however, there are people speaking the Kalanguya because they are very near the municipality of Tino who speaks the same. Next, please. So basically, Hung Duan is an agricultural area, and the primary source of livelihood is on agricultural activities. The municipality also have other economic activities to include commerce and trade, industry, and tourism. Next, please. Commerce and trade, we only have minimal and micro industry, and we rely on tourism as part of our income generating activities in the municipality. So the local government unit of Hung Duan is a home where nature and culture coexist. And aside from its abundant flora and fauna, the breathtaking view of the Hung Duan rice terraces, clusters, and the preserved forest ranges are the ever humble and accommodating Hung Duans, whose culture and traditions remain intact and are still being practiced in the present generation. With this incomparable relationship of human and nature, Hung Duan is envisioned to be a living heritage destination that fosters caring relationship with tourists from around the world and thrives on and nurtures the aspirations of local communities. As for our tourism, we are very proud that we are part of the UNESCO inscribed heritage list because of our famous Hung Duan rice terraces. So the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization Heritage List as a Living Cultural Landscape in 1995 included Hung Duan as one of its lists, and it's something that we are proud of. So aside from this man-made tourist attraction, we also have our natural tourist attractions to include our hot spring, our Mount Napulawan, and our Balentimal Falls. Next, please. So aside from those attractions, we also have our festivals that draws tourism activities in the municipality. First is our Tungo at Hongduan. It is a 3-day activity that showcases the display of indigenous arts and crafts, as well as agricultural product displays. The term tungo refers to the rest period of the agricultural cycle, specifically after the planting season. Next, please. The Uyaoy at Hongduan, the Uyaoy Festival, is the second festival. It's a prestige rite as it is a long and the most expensive festival performed by the wealthy people, or the Kadangyan as we call it here. It is conducted every after 3 years, and it highlights the conduct of rituals like Naba and Pinhodan, which is the dancing of native dances in the municipality of Hongduan. The third festival is the Punno. Next, please. The Punok is traditionally a post-harvest festival or post-harvest tagging ritual of Barangay Hapao, participated by the 2 other adjacent barangays, namely Baang and Nungulunan, as a form of thanksgiving for a successful and bountiful harvest. It is performed at the river featuring the Kinaag and the Pakid. Next, please. So, the Punok is part of the Hua or Hua. It is a 2-day festival led by the Dumupag. The Dumupag is the designated family to lead this festival. So, on the first day is the Baki and the Inom, and on the second day is the Punok. So, for the first day, the Baki and the Inom, next please, is where the shaman or the lead priest or the native priest leads the Baki, or it's a ritual for before the conduct of the Punok. In here, animals are being sacrificed, specifically the chicken, wherein the biles are being checked if it is good or not. So if the native priest check the bile as good, then an elder will shout at the elevation of the rice terraces for the people to know that a punuk will be held the next day. Further, during this day is also the inum, wherein wherein rice wines are being served by the dumupag, and the people are allowed to drink and have mermaking. They are not allowed to eat rice or eat any food during the inum. It's only for the rice wine. So the next day is the punuk. Punuk is featuring the kinaag and the pakid. So the kinaag is made up of rice stalks, usually formed in a ring-shaped or a human-like figure for the people to tug on, or for the people to hook their pakid with. And they are being decorated with the donga or the tea plant. Next, please. So, the next day during the punuk, community members from the 3 adjacent barangays parade and meet at the river. And as they are nearing the river, next please, they dance and they showcase their kinaag, their pakid, and as they are nearing the river, they taunt each other. And upon arriving at the river, the lead or the leader will perform the gopa or the prayer for each participants to be good and for the conduct of the punuk to be a success. So the 3 barangays with their constituents are actually cheering for each other, and they are led by their barangay captains. Next, please. So after the gopa, they will be performing the tagging ritual in the river. So the packet is hooked on the kinaag, and each team will have to use their forces to tag to get the item, and the winner to be declared is to wear the kinaag or the the item being tagged is near to its side. So the declared winner is happy because it is their belief that by winning the punuk, they will have a bountiful harvest the next agricultural cycle. Next, please. So after the tagging ritual, they will let the kinaag flow into the river so that the people downstream will be notified that punuk was done and the harvest season at the upstream area is already concluded. Next, please. So aside from the tagging ritual, the people also of Hongduan added other activities for just like the upuhan hiyahya and the wrestling in the river or bultu. Next, please. So as to sustainability of the activity, the punok can only be sustained by the participation of the community and the Dumupag family. And aside from this, the local government unit of Hongduan also approved the Municipal Ordinance number 80, series of 2018, entitled An Ordinance Institutionalizing the Annual Celebration of Punok every month of July or August in the municipality of Hongduan and providing funds thereof. This is for the other logistics that will be needed in the conduct of the Punok. Further, transfer of tradition from the Dumupag family is very important. If the Dumupag decided not to continue, then there will be no punok to be done. And the participation of younger generations in the conduct of the rituals is also very important, as they will have knowledge and experience regarding what is the activity all about, and they will live onto it during their lifetime. And lastly, the participation of all the community members is a must. Without the community members participating in the conduct of the punok, then it will not be that successful. Next, please. So, as to tourism and the conduct of punok, as you can see in the pictures, yearly there is an increase in the participants and also an increase in the viewers and in the visitors. So with the conduct of this punok, we are very much happy that we are recording an increase in tourist arrivals, which help in boosting the economic activities in the municipality. So this is all, and I thank you.
네, 고맙습니다.
Yes, thank you
아마
very
이
much for your
필리핀의
presentation.
이푸가오주 홍두안 지역에서
On
그
Hongduan of Ifugao,
줄다리기 의례와
you talked
놀이인
about the
그
tugging rituals and
푸눅과
games,
특히
particularly
이와
Punuk,
관련된 계단식 노원과의
and
관계성을 어떻게
also on the
관광과
rice
간에
terraces.
그 접목을 시키면서 어떻게
We
전승될
talked
수
about how this can
있는지
be linked with
이 지역
tourism and also the
원주민들이
importance
보시다시피
of
아주
transmission. And as you can
화려한
see, the
경품
community members
옵시를
are all
입고
wearing
어찌 보면은 우리나라
beautiful
시어버듯이
traditional
여러
attire.
가지 또
And
줄다리기에
you can
또
see that
나무를
the
당겨내고
tugging
이런
rituals
모습을
also
보여주시거든요.
involve
그런
wrestling as well as
모습들을
pulling the kina.
전체적인 것들이 어떤 관광 산업 속에서
And I believe that this is
현지인들이
a key
살아가는
part of
하나의
tourism,
그,
and it can
하나의
be
그
a critical factor for the
에너지원으로서
community
조상님들께
members
감사하는
as it
그런
motivates
아름답게
them. And it's also about
설명을
giving
해주신 것
thanks to
같습니다.
their
다시 한번
ancestors. So thank you very much
감사드리고요.
for your
세
presentation.
번째
And let us now move on
발표는
to the next
홍보라는
presentation.
측면에서의 접근인 것
The next
같습니다.
presentation is
여러분들도
particularly
뉴스
on
통해서 다
promotion. I'm
보셨겠지만
sure that you all
최근 한국
saw on the
관광공사
news,
홍보 영상이 국내는
which
물론 전
is the
세계를
video
감동을
of
하고
Korea
있다고
Tourism
하는데요.
Organization
이번엔 그
that
영상과
received the
관련된
spotlight
그
around the
본문을
world.
보시고
And I would like to
관광
invite our
브랜드화
next speaker who
차원에서
has
발표를
a
들어보시기
great
바랍니다.
relevance with this
아마
video, and who will be
이
talking
대학
about the
가면은 이
importance of
관광
brand.
어떤 이 컨텐츠 쪽에서의
The
최고의
university that
대학이라고 볼 수
this
있는데요.
speaker is from is probably
세종대학교
the most
이슬기
prominent
교수님을
university when it
모시겠습니다.
comes to content. So
이슬기
let me now invite
교수님께서는
Professor Lee Seul-gi of Sejong
2020
University.
관광 브랜드 캠페인이란 그런
In the
주제로
2020
발표를
tourism brand
해주시겠습니다.
campaign,
발표
he played a pivotal
부탁드리겠습니다.
role, so he'll
많이
be giving us
기다리셨죠?
presentation on that campaign. So please, your presentation.
네, 좌장님 감사드립니다.
Thank you very much
Hello,
to the
hello.
moderator.
Good afternoon to you. So I think I need to make a few acknowledgments before I start my presentation, because the campaign itself is actually not my campaign, but rather my good colleague, Mr. Chung-Sub Oh Chung-Sub. He works for the Korea Tourism Organization and was recently awarded a recognition or prize from the President of the Republic of Korea for his endeavor in this campaign. So as the chair of this session mentioned, I will talk about the 2020 National Tourism Branding Campaign, which was a huge success for not just the Korea Tourism Organization, but for the entire tourism industry. And I think there are a few takeaways that tugging ritual ceremonies might take in order to publicize and increase the interest on what we consider as traditional culture. So this presentation has already been presented to the Department of Foreign Affairs of the Philippines before, and I need to mention that as well. And it has been a little bit modified to accommodate some of the features of this event. Okay, so first I'll talk a little bit about the 2020 strategy and 5 major areas of improvement for the Korea Tourism Organization, because they had a mission. And after that, as we all know, there has been a unprecedented circumstance due to the coronavirus, and they have changed their mission and therefore the advertising campaign, which has been largely dominated by celebrities and big tourism demand generators, into somewhat of a softer approach. And then I'll talk about the 2020 campaign. So at the start of 2020, the Korea Tourism Organization has been focusing on creative mission, creativity, somehow being incorporated into their advertising campaign. But the strategy was quite straightforward before the coronavirus. So the long-term marketing strategy by the organization was to become an organization that promotes and facilitates tourism as an industry, driving growth and contributing to better quality of life. So both income or economic impact as well as quality of life. And the 3 management goals by 2024 was to increase the inbound tourists by 27 million, high-value visitors, because we have been predominantly attracting group tourists, which is not considered a very lucrative market in terms of value creation or additional value generation, and also spread that to regions. So right now, before coronavirus, most of the tourists were concentrated to Seoul and Jeju, and maybe Busan, but not to other areas. And we think that this is a bad thing, because tourism industry would promote both economic impact as well as quality of life, better quality of life. And we want that to spill over to the regions. So marketing program was developed based on that management goals and tactics under them. So platform marketing, storytelling, smart tourism, viral marketing, and destination marketing strategy were considered by the start of the year. Okay, so early 2020, we thought that coronavirus was either not that serious or somehow be overcome by maybe mid or late year 2020. But then drastic measures were beginning to be contemplated, because everybody found out by the mid 2020 that the coronavirus situation was not getting any better, even when the summer season came. And also international travel was something that is not to be foreseen in the near future. So the advertising campaign was required to make a strategic revision. And that I'm sure you'll all agree that we don't advertise to attract tourists in the near future. Nowadays, we don't, because it's not possible. But we need something that still stimulates interest and sustains consideration on international travel to Korea after all this is over. So in doing so, Mr. O, not myself, applied what is called the Maya principle, most advanced but acceptable. So he's a very creative person, and he wants to apply creative things, but they also need to be acceptable. Right? So if it's not accepted by the public, then the effects of publicity programs can be quite doubtful. So B-class culture, I'm sure everybody knows this by now, is quite popular in Korea, widespread in the world because of this guy. So Mr. Tsai has been quite famous internationally. And this is just one example of what is considered a B-rated culture product in Korea. So many of the comedy shows, advertisements, the bottom right posters, you see these, right? The birds here and the person here, he's actually a historical figure, but these are actual posters of tourism promotion or campaign posters that are used by regional governments in Korea. Interesting, right? Because, you know, in terms of the quality of art, we think that it's quite unusual, unconventional, and probably something that you wouldn't use for, you know, official tourism promotion campaign. But we do. And we think that such unorthodox method can sometimes provoke interest of the general public who are very, very familiar with now, very accustomed to good scenery and beautiful images and maybe celebrities, right? So if we are to compete in that space, I think we need to invest more. But right now, it's just not that time where tourism is materialized. So softer approach is required, and to efficiently stimulate interest, we need something of a creative measure. So here are some buzzwords. Mr. O is all about keeping up to date with these advertising campaigns, what and why, staying on the line, storytelling. These are some of the principles that he has applied in his marketing campaign. And he focused on some keywords such as welcoming, because right now it's not that, you know, people can travel to Korea from foreign countries. And we don't advertise to stimulate current demand, but we just want to be not forgotten or remembered, considered when all of this is over. So such messages could be created by not by celebrities, which would used to be the norm, and not by provoking interest in a way that stimulates people's emotions and intentions to travel to Korea immediately. But rather than that, we just want to maintain interest. After that, he considered the intermediary or the platform to send out messages, and he thought that YouTube would be the better option because it is primarily based on videos, and also all these considerations on users and how far you can reach with these messages and what kind of content he could deliver through the platform. So YouTube. Innovations that he considered, we say contactless or untagged in Korea in terms of not requiring physical contact. Z generation, which are the new norm in governing cultural advancement. K prevention, which is something that we take pride ourselves in, and digital campaign. So considering these methods, the 2020 campaign was developed. So some philosophies and creativities like masks that promote the Korea Tourism Organization was used along the way. The digital transformation led Mr. O to produce and implement the global campaign, including a couple projects. So the primary message here is that Korea as a country is a welcoming destination. That's where this comes from. Our hearts are always open, right? The integrated slogan. And to do so, the KTO has recruited not a celebrity, not a big name. Someone who can be intimidating does not quite fit the criteria here, right? So someone who is less known, but somehow more friendlier in terms of creating a welcoming atmosphere. And name of the group is called ITZY, and they have been promoting ambassadors of the campaign since last year. I guess this is the most noteworthy part where the destination advertisements or marketing videos have primarily been concentrating on beautiful scenery and maybe tourist activities there. But right now, we don't have any tourists. So rather than promoting a tourist activity at a certain destination, the KTO has decided to just show the destination without the tourists, but somehow exciting stuff. And maybe some of this is B-rated because you see all these funny dances and unconventional images going on there. But this has been a huge success because it still provokes interest and does not conflict with the goals. So still the objectives of the advertising campaign was achieved. Very huge response, very favorable and huge response from the critics and general public. Once again, recently, the president has awarded him a very selective prize that is going to the public officials who have been, contributing with creative tactics. So it was such a huge success that requests from other regional tourism organizations have also followed. This is Gangneung, Andong, and Mokpo. But as you know, somewhere along the line, these creative programs gets old, right? So people anticipate what's going to be followed easily, and then the effectiveness suddenly deteriorates. So new concepts or new props were also added, like you see these pink suits, other arrangements, and also more musical hooks and comic elements. So somewhere in these videos there are like hidden rabbits, and I'm sure you might enjoy at least once finding them. And then I guess this is the important part for today's takeaway. So because the B-rated video actually used updated or modern version of traditional music, people started gaining interest on traditional Korean music. It's called pansori, but it is not the original or traditional version. It has been modified to meet the requests or the demand of the current Z generation consumers. But after that, people started, taking more interest in pansori. And these videos, the traditional version, right? Traditional version with the scenery here of the destinations with the traditional pansori has also gained popularity. So these videos are also being promoted on YouTube now. Okay, so and Feel the Rhythm of Korea, it does not limit itself to, the campaign does not limit itself to traditional version too. So the current up-to-date or K-pop version of that also is being promoted with the friendly faces here of the tourism ambassadors. And even further, you can also do similar creative marketing tactics with the characters, the cute ones. So Kingdom Friends were developed to somehow deliver, once again, friendly, not intimidating messages. And these are the characters that have been developed and right now being actively used. So you see them on SNS. You can also, I think Mr. O is trying to also develop products in cooperation with destinations. So very soon, I think some of them already, you can see them on the market, on t-shirts, maybe if you're using a messenger service, you can also find them there too. So the videos are on YouTube. I'm pretty sure you might want to check that out. And once again, the emojis are also being developed. I'm pretty sure one of these messengers would be make available these characters in the near future as well. Okay, so and all of these once again meet the objectives of the marketing team. Okay, or how they brand Korea as a tourism destination. And in this time and era where international travel is not so easy or close to impossible, what kind of messages you want to send? So this is impersonating the characters, and a lot of these messages eventually create a personality for these emojis or characters. And in the long run, the Korean tourism organization believes that it would be effective in delivering softer messages rather than showing grand scenery and big A-list stars, we think that this is more of a long-run effective marketing approach. Something to also provoke interest. This has been this was last year actually, where people meet contactlessly throughout the globe by a event, and this was called IY Kung Challenge. So celebrities and also close up or wrap up with the Inauchi band, the traditional music band that was performing in the promotion videos. I guess I only have 15 seconds, so I'll hurry. But Tug of War also in a similar situation, that the current demand may not be so visible, but somewhat of a modification or accommodating the current culture might be quite helpful in not only stimulating the current demand, but also provoking interest on the traditional version, just as Korea Tourism Organization did. So I think I ran out of my time. Thank you very much.
네, 감사합니다.
Thank you very much. Mr. Lee talked to us about the 2020 Korea brand campaign, talked about the very successful brand campaign launched by KTO and how we can think about definitely preserving tugging rituals and games in the prototypical fashion, but also to try to think about the new contemporary demands. And maybe think about how to incorporate B-class culture into a very creative type of a marketing campaign. I think that given the fourth industrial revolution, this aspect of creativity is a very important element. So I think that was a very relevant presentation. Thank you very much for that. So now I'd like to move on to our last presenter in the second session. It's surprising how fast time goes. Our next presenter is from the Cambodia Ministry of Culture, Bun Srevi. Bun Srevi is a director at the ministry in Cambodia, and the director is going to talk about comparison between tangible and intangible cultural heritage.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Srevi, and I'm working at the Ministry of Culture and Fine Arts, in particular in the Directorate General of Techniques for Cultural Affairs. My topic is to compare between the tangible and intangible cultural heritage in Cambodia. So this is my outline. I will briefly give the historical background and then followed by the ministry responsibility and how we are doing right now, like to preserve and safeguard, also promoting the cultural heritage in the country. And then I will have a few paths for the key challenges and then with the conclusion. So to start with my presentation, as I mentioned that I would like to have the brief history background. Here I'm showing a picture of a cave that called Ang Spin, which is located in the northwest of Cambodia. And this cave is the prehistorical site, which is dated to 70,000 BCE. And it's maybe it's not maybe, it is the oldest one to date in the country. And as you might already know that Cambodia has like the early history that we have a very big like influence from India. So this is one of the example of a temple which is in Thakka province. It is called Mahasram Risai, and this temple is dated to 5th to 6th century AD. And stylistically, this temple that you can see that it's much similar to the temple located in the south of India. And this is just one of the example, but we also have like thousands of temples which is exist in the country and beyond. And through time, the statistic of the temple it's developed like through time and through the local taste. Here I just wanted to like show one of the example that the previous temple that I show is pre-Angkorian period, but this is the Angkorian period, and you already know that the Angkor Wat temple that it is in the Angkor period. And this temple, as you see that we cannot find anywhere else in the world. So as I mentioned that the knowledge and through time has changed the belief of the people. So like it really different from the Indian style that as I mentioned earlier. And in terms of comparing these two like tangible and intangible cultural heritage, these two areas cannot be separated, because like to make to build a temple or making an object and artist the object, that we need the knowledge of the people. So this cannot be separated. And like before the Cambodian, like we believe in the Hinduism, but today we believe in Theravada Buddhism. So here's just the example that through time, even the belief has changed, but people still engage and like worship to the temple. Here is one of the example of the Buddha rituals that the community that who living in that areas, like they perform a ritual that which is from Theravada Buddhist, and they walk clockwise like the temple like 3 times, and before they're going to conduct the ritual of that ritual like in Buddhist monastery. And here I would like to like give the kind of how the ministry responsible for the tangible and intangible cultural heritage. And here the Directorate General of Techniques for Cultural Affairs, one of the tasks is to safeguard and promote the intangible cultural heritage. And we have 5 sub-departments such as Department of Culture, the Department of Fine Art and Handicrafts, Department of like Cinema and Cultural Diffusion, and Department of Performing Arts, and Department of Book and Reading. And here I just want to give some example of the effort that the ministry done to preserve and safeguard, promote the cultural heritage through legal frameworks. So here is just a few examples of this is the national policy for cultures, and I'm sorry that we only have the Khmer version, that we don't have English, so I'm sorry for that. But the cultural policy itself is trying to promote and safeguard like both the tangible and cultural heritage. But in comparison, like for the tangible cultural heritage, we can see that it seems that the attention that really focus on the tangible, because we have like more support from like even from national level to international level through the projects, like through the restoring project of the temples, and also to through the international committees such as the ICC also and ICC are very here. They focus on preserving and promoting the tangible. However, if we compare to the ICH in Cambodia, like everyone know about like the temple, for example, the Angkor Wat, but we have like 5 elements that inscribed into the UNESCO list. However, not many people know about the ICH, like even the community themselves. As I mentioned that the intangible cultural heritage is support, done by the Directorate General of Technique for Cultural Affairs, and one of the activity plan is we are mapping the inventory list for the of the nation, and this was engaged like by the provincial department and also the community themselves. And through this, we can identify all the elements, the ICH elements within the country. However, this work needs to be more updated, and the inventory list also needs to be updated. So this is what we are trying to work on the list. And one of the other example is recently we have a project like to revitalize the ICH elements. This is I just want to raise an example of a community which is not far from the Phnom Penh city, and this is led by the females like master. There are only few of them survive, and we are so proud that this only few survivors, but they're trying to safeguard their element through transmitting their knowledge to a younger generation. And this is just very rare to see in the within the country. And another activity is we are trying to do research and documentation. Through this project, we gather master researchers and experts from different skills, like to come together and discuss, and then we publish like many kind of ICH elements, and we are trying to in the goal of to reach all level of people. And this is another activity has been implemented through the education. Through the education, we first we have the formal education that we are collaborating with the private sectors. That we have a case study, like we choose a specific high school in the city, and then we try to integrate the arts form into the education. And for the informal education, we are trying to support and engage, encourage the community within the country to engage with us by transmitting their knowledge, because ICH is not, as I mentioned, that it might be easy to be forgotten if it is not practiced. So we are trying to, in whatever we can, to support the master and to encourage them to teach young generations. On top of that, each year to safeguard and promote the tangible and intangible, we conducted like festivals and other cultural events, like within the the city and also to the provinces. And we are not only focused on the Cambodian, but also to the minority people to engage with us. I just want to raise some few of the key challenges that we have been faced. So even we are trying so hard to promote the ICH, like I mentioned earlier, that the tangible is if we compare the tangible is much more support and get more attention to that areas rather than the ICH. So even we're trying so hard, but we still have the challenges with the lack of public awareness and also the limited research and documentation because not many people are interested in these topics. And another challenge is the economic challenge. Like we can see that through our reports, like many artists, they gave up their jobs, like as an artist, like migrate to the other countries to find another job and get up the status as an artist. So this is, you can see, it is very a big concern for us. And lastly, is the management, which it's about like human resource and the mechanism that we are trying to promote and trying to get more people to engage with us. So to find these key challenges, we will find the solution and we will put the activity plans to make sure that those students solve these challenges. And for this, I also would like to emphasize that, as I mentioned, like between the two tangible and intangible cultural heritage, there is a huge gap between these two. The ICH elements is many of them will be disappear, especially without practice or engage from the community themselves. And especially in this the global pandemics, like many communities that they didn't perform or celebrate the community, like the heritage, that the elements that they usually do, like within the year, like in the specific time of the year that they are supposed to celebrate or perform that kind of ritual, but because of the COVID pandemic, that they couldn't perform or celebrate. So this is the big concern for us, and it might be those elements might be disappear if the community stop practicing their element that they supposed to do. So yes, I would like to conclude here that there is a big gap between like tangible and intangible cultural heritage. People are more interested and engaged with the tangible rather than intangible cultural heritage. So thank you.
네. 네, 감사합니다.
Yes, thank you very much for your
이게
presentation.
폐기가 있어서 제가 조금 기다렸습니다.
There is a time
김수레비
difference,
선생님께서는
so there was a slight time gap.
캄보디아의
So
문명문화유산이라는 주제를 가지고
there was that brief silence. But at any rate, the presentation was on tangible and intangible cultural heritage, and she mentioned that the two go hand in hand. And she also mentioned that it's important that the skills and knowledge be transmitted if we really want tangible heritage to also flourish. But ICH is all the more threatened versus tangible heritage, and she also mentioned that collaborative efforts are necessary because a lot of time is necessary to preserve and safeguard ICH. Therefore, we need experts, we need support all around. So she talked about the two sides of ICH as well as tangible cultural heritage. So once again, thank you very much for your presentation. And that was the presentations by our four speakers. A big round of applause to all of our speakers for their wonderful presentations. Thank you very much. I believe we have about 10 minutes remaining, so let us engage in a brief discussion with our speakers. As I have mentioned, we will be also catering to the questions on the chat box, but before that, let me pose the questions for our speakers. And if there are any questions on the chat box, I'm sure that our staff will relay that to me as the moderator. So my first question, culture is composed of various traits, and the traits sometimes converge and sometimes they diverge. We talk about convergence these days, and we can see that these characters come together and sometimes they separate. So what can we do for sustainability? I think that was the main theme of the presentation. So my first question to you, convergence can be A plus B equals C, but sometimes it could be D, or sometimes it could be E, but then for certain cases, only A or B may remain. So if we take this into account, culture is something that's ever evolving. This is a characteristic of culture because it's ever changing. And if the cultural characteristics change or evolve or disappear, how can we call this culture? Does it still carry the value as culture? In other words, some people are criticizing the fact that culture is only used as a certain resource for certain activities. I know that our speakers have been focusing on not just about maintaining the original form, but on the importance of the evolution and change to culture. So then, when we think of preservation as well as change to cultural traits, what is your perspective? So maybe I would like to ask Mr. Kim Jong-un on how he thinks about this comment. And I do have a separate question for Professor Hee. So I will ask the question to you afterwards. And also from the Philippines and Cambodia, if you do have any comments that you would like to add, that would be great. So please, first, Mr. Kim.
Okay, the mic appears to be working now. If I go back to my presentation, I did talk about the prototypical form of festivals and the prototypical form of tugging rituals and tugging games. If we take a look at the many festivals that are being held right now and the way that people perform and practice tugging games, there's the aspect of transmission and preservation and the aspect of contemporary reinterpretation. And there's a gap between the two, between the tradition and contemporary practice of the festival. So there is a gap, and we have to really think about that. In the case of the Philippines and Cambodia, I think that much of these customs are being practiced in their prototypical fashion. This is based on my own personal experience when I visited those countries and saw the tug of war there being practiced in person. But in the case of Korea, I think there are two tracks. There's that aspect of preservation and transmission, and then there's a separate way of contemporary reinterpretation of festivals. And there's a gap because there was a time in our history when these traditions were cut effectively. In our history, they were not practiced for several years, and then they were picked up later on, and they were picked up as a way of part of festivals. So if we're to give another purpose to these festivals, then that would rightly be transmission and preservation. Instead of giving these festivals or these tug-of-war elements a separate purpose, I think that it would be more effective for us to revert back to the original prototypical purpose, which is transmission and preservation. So you're saying that the prototype and festivals, there's a big gap between the two, but you're arguing that the festivals should incorporate the prototypical elements. And especially when when humanity first came into the world, people all did these things just very naturally. I mean, we came up with the word festival. We talk about festivals now, but our ancient forefathers did not think about it in the form of festival. So I think that, yes, I understand your explanation much better after this question and answer segment. Would our representative from Cambodia or the Philippines like to add to this thought? Please raise your hand. No?
네, 없으신 것 같습니다.
Okay, so I don't believe there are any comments, but I would like to move on to the second question. The second question today is,
저도 그 박물관에서 한 30년 근무를 하면서
this is based on my own personal thinking because I've been working at a museum for 30 years, and I know that marketing is very important for, all of these museums and art galleries and etc. Mr. Lee did an excellent job, especially in his English presentation. So I would like to ask Mr. Lee a question. I know that the KTO, the Korea Tourism Organization's recent brand campaign was really successful. And yes, you talked about this B-class culture. I think that could be seen as something. We have to be very careful about how we phrase, A class and B class, A class celebrities, B class celebrities. We don't want to offend anybody. But the KTO was very successful with this recent brand campaign, and you are a governmental organization, and I know that many regional, local tourism offices are doing the same thing. Now, if these regional organizations were all to do the same thing, that could lead to synergy. But won't that mean that everything starts looking the same? All the regional provinces, if they do the same thing, all these quirky, innovative campaigns, won't they all look the same? And won't they seem standardized? Because this is, I guess, it's a way that museums think differently compared against tourism organizations. So I would like to ask what you think about that. Yes, in my response, I would like to go back to the Korean language. Thank you for the great question. We talk about B-class culture. It appears that we're talking about a hierarchy. There's very sophisticated culture and a lower form of culture. No, this typically entails a low-budget campaign. It's similar how you would see the gap between Hollywood blockbuster movies and movies with a lower budget. And this is a kind of cultural phenomena that we already see. But this doesn't mean that when I say B-class culture, it doesn't necessarily mean that this culture is very inferior, but that the visual expression of B-class culture is a little bit different from A-class culture. But you're very right in your question. When these things become popular, there's going to be this huge proliferation of more and more B-class campaigns, B-class marketing, and then they will all seem to be the same. And people are going to lose interest. And so that means their value will be eroded. This is definitely not something that we should abuse. That's going to be very dangerous. We have to make use of them appropriately as a means for certain ends, but we don't have to necessarily do everything in a B-class format. I think for some posters or some brand campaigns that especially reach out to the younger generation, like millennials or Z generation, we can try to make use of different elements, not just B-class culture. But B-class culture can be an option out of many. And also the other concern is that we don't want to infringe on the value of, cultural heritage or heritage values that we want to preserve. Which is why if you look at the KTO videos, yes, we incorporate some B-class elements, but we also try to incorporate traditional music and traditional performance, not in a way that derides the traditional music. We don't don't want to make it seem inferior and boring. We're trying to have a synergy effect between the two. So in marketing tactics, we want to use B class, but in a very careful and well thought out way. Thank you very much. I think Dr. Lee, you talked about how we can try to have creativity, popularity, and marketing value while approaching something that is very common and ordinary and something that is very familiar to people. And you're saying that it's important for us to try to keep the content as is, or maybe have a sort of a new contemporary twist to it. If we do that, then we're not going to make it seem very boring or standardized. I think that was a great answer. I don't think that there are any questions from the floor. I believe that the four presenters did an excellent job in covering their information, which is why there is no more questions. So I think we can close with the two sessions and also the two questions also, because we have to move on to the next session. We are running out of time. In this session, we talked about sustainability and convergence. I think it was an opportunity for us to rethink those concepts. I know you talked about many different things in your presentation, but with that, we would like to close this session as we think forward into the future. We've heard from four speakers, Mr. Kim, Heidi Hermosora, Mr. Lee, Ms. Bun Srevi. Thank you very much for being with us. And also, right now is the weekend. The weather is really nice right now here in Korea. And we still have many people joining us online. So thank you very much to the audience in Brisbane. Now I'd like to hand over the microphone to our
Thank you, Professor,
MC.
and all four presenters. As a moderator mentioned, it's a Saturday, but everyone participate today. And once again, I really appreciate being here for today.